What is up, everybody? Welcome back to yet another episode of this tutorial. Today we're gonna add animations. So we're gonna go from something very stale, like this, into something more like this. And of course there are a few ways we can do this. The first one being that we split the tiles, or the sprites rather. So we have water separated from the actual sprite, which in this case would be the water corner. So whenever we're gonna draw it later, we first draw the water animation, and then on top of that, we draw the actual sprite. And what would be pro here is that it's simple to see, and it will work with other water tiles if we ever add it. And the bad part of this option is that we have to remake a lot of the code that we did in our previous episodes, and that would be wasted time, and it's just frustrating. And whenever we make the draw call, we have to do it in two parts. First we draw the water, and then we draw the actual sprites, which is twice as long as we did before, and that's not really good for performance. And of course there's an option too, which is that we add all the animation sprites into the same array as before, making them 4 times as large. And each of those tiles, even though it's just an animation switch, they would also have a unique ID, even though it's the same sprite but just a different animation. That's one way of doing it. And the best part about this option is that it's the easiest one we currently have, and also we don't need to change any code from before, we only add more tiles. And the bad part about this option is it's a lot of extra code, a lot of unnecessary code, and it's also going to be very messy. And that's why we don't go for option 2, because we're gonna go for option 3. And in this option we will do some changes to our tile class, the very basic tile class where we store the sprite, the ID and the name. But we add another constructor that can take in an array of sprites, and depending if we give it a single sprite or an array of sprites, it's gonna be a normal tile versus an animated tile. So later when we draw it, we can just check, is it an array in this tile or is it just a sprite? And then we know if we need to animate it. And the sprite will have the same ID no matter what animation part or animation index it's currently in, which is good. And it's clearly the coolest way. And the best part about option 3 is that we don't need to change the code very much compared to option 1, still a little bit more than option 2, but the old code will still run. And the bad part about option 3 is that we still need to do some changes to the code. And it can be a bit confusing, but that's alright, I think you guys can handle it. But before we get coding, don't forget to leave a like if you like this video, and also hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. Cheers guys, and now let's get coding. Let's begin our episode in the tile class. So first off, we need to make another constructor to handle any type of animation tiles that we have. We don't need to change the current one, we're just gonna copy it and make another one. And this new one will take in an array of sprites instead of just a single sprite. And up here we will change the stored sprite into an array of sprites. And in our first constructor, the basic one, we're simply gonna say equals, the sprite is equal new buffered image array, but size is only going to be 1, and that sprite 0 equals sprite. This dot sprite equals sprite. So whenever we just give it a sprite, we create an array of 1 in size, and then we pass the sprite into that array. And if we want to get the sprite, we can say return sprite 0. But this one will only return the first index in the array. So even if we have an array of sprites, we still need another getter, which is public buffered image get sprite. We're gonna call it the same, but this one is gonna take an int animation index and returns sprite animation index, like so. So all we have to do now in order to get the animations, we simply increase the animation index. That way we loop through the array and we can get an animation going, which is really cool. Our work in tile is currently done. We will come back here a little bit later in the episode. So let's switch over to Tile Manager. And we have a lot of different tiles here. And I suggest we start with just the water. To get that animated, it's just one type of sprite. We don't build anything, we don't rotate anything. So let's try to get the water animation going first of all. And we do that by dragging this over to this side so we can see them both at the same time, what we need. And since the water tile is going to be an animation, we need to pass in an array of sprites, and of course the ID name will be the same. And this method only returns one sprite, but we need a method that can return all the sprites we need for the water animation, and it's in total of 4 sprites, and it will always be 4 sprites for our sake. We don't have any tiles with more or less animations. So let's copy this one, and instead of a simple sprite, we're gonna say get any sprites. We could type in int amount of sprites we want, but we always know it's going to be 4. So let's make it simple and just ignore that. Then we type 4 int I equals 0, I is less than 4, I plus plus. And we need somewhere of storing it. I'm gonna copy that for simplicity. Buffered image R equals new buffered image array, and the size will be 4. And in this loop we can use this method, but we're gonna comment that. And here we go and say array I equals get sprite. We have X chord, then we have Y chord, but we need some way of increasing the X chord, which is plus I. And that's gonna give us 4 sprites, and the coordinate is gonna increase 1 by 1 every time. Yeah, that looks good. And all we need to do now is to return the array. And then we can copy this method, go up to water. Instead of get sprite, it's get any sprites. I think that's gonna work. That's all right. Let's try if it works. There will be no animation, just see if our code didn't break anything. Hopefully it didn't break nothing. Yeah, we're still able to draw everything, which is good. Now we need to get the animation going. And we do that by going into... Yeah, let's start in editing. We could have our images animate in the editing as well. And later on we will do the same in playing, but we start out easy and simple, so we start with just the editing view, or editing scene. And in our draw level method here, we need some way of checking if this ID represents a sprite that is a animation. And we do something simple like if is animation and then we pass in the ID. If it is, then we do something different. If it's not, then we do the normal one. But in here, let's copy that and make a private boolean is animation int sprite ID. Now we need to return true or false depending on the sprite. And how do we do that? Let's talk with Tile Manager first. Return game.tile get Tile Manager dot is sprite animation sprite ID. And in here, in our Tile Manager class, we simply add a method, public, boolean as well. Int sprite ID. And in here, we check for tiles.get sprite ID. We need to go back to our tile class and somehow check if this tile is now on animation or not. And we do that by returning true if the size of the array is larger than 1. If we only gave it 1 sprite, it's not an animation. If it gave it more than 1, it is an animation. So public boolean as well. Is animation, of course. That's how you spell it. And in this method, we're gonna check if sprite dot length is more than 1, return true, else return false. Think that's gonna work? Yeah. But here's a little trick. If you're checking for something and then returning true if that's the case, then we can comment this out and make a much simplified version of the return statement. So this is a little bit of a code trick. If sprite, no, that's wrong, return sprite dot length larger than 1. This is the same as this, but it's less code and works the same, but looks better. Sometimes this can look confusing if you're a beginner or never seen it before, but that's the same as that. So we're gonna keep it like so. And back to our tile manager class, we say is animation, but we also need to return this to whoever calls it. We save tile, go to editing, and if it's true, then we need some way of getting the sprites inside this array. We're gonna do the same here to begin. We simply copy this line, paste it inside here. This get sprite exists in here, and we can copy that and make a similar one, sprite ID, comma, int animation index. So we're gonna make this variable soon, and this method calls tile manager get sprite. And we can copy this method, paste it, and make sure it asks also for a int animation index. Why are you red? Shouldn't be red. They're called the same. Let's get any sprite instead. And instead of getting the sprite, just get sprite from tile, we added the get sprite if we have an animation index. And we do here. And we pass that in. So now we're calling this function or this method. Then we save everything, go back to editing. Instead of get sprite, we say get sprite in ID animation index. And that's gonna give us an error because we don't have anything called an animation index, but we go up here. We need an animation index, and also we need a private int tick. And this tick will increase 1 every frame. And once we have a tick that matches our animation speed, the animation index increase by 1. So in our render, at the very top, we say update tick. This is usually a way of doing it when you have something like animation. And in here we say tick plus plus. And if tick is larger or equal to our speed, let's say 20. If it reaches 20, then we want to reset tick so we can start over, and animation index increases by 1. If animation same here, if animation index is larger or equal to 4, because there will only be 4, then animation index gets reset. And this is what we're gonna use in order to make sure it animates. For every frame we draw, we update the animation. So, if everything works now, we should see the normal water animate. So, fingers crossed. It started out right away, which is a good sign, and then edit. And nothing happening. Why is that? And I found the issue. We forgot to, we have 2 different sprites here, or get sprites, but they call the same function. We forgot to add the animation index to the one that should return the animation index. And it's not called get sprite, it's called get any sprite. Not that one, that one. And we need to be a bit careful because this method is called get any animation sprite. This one is called Get Animation Sprites. So yeah, we need to be careful about that, but now it should work. And we have some animation going. That's cool. And as you can see, it's under the normal water that animates, not the corners or beaches or islands. So let's add that too. And to get the other water tiles working, that needs both something to be built and rotated. So it's two pieces, not just one. We will need something in our image fix class, and I think we're gonna start here. And I think we can use the same one, but we will alter it. Rotate second image only plus animation. And this class, just like the one above, will take in an array of images, but instead of it being one water tile and one corner, we're gonna make sure we only import water tiles in this first array, all 4 of them, and then we're gonna add another image, which is buffered image second image. And we already know that we always will rotate around, or rotate the second image corner in this case, and not the actual water tile. I think we can remove it. We don't really need to specify it in the method itself, so we will just do it manually down here. We could remove it from this method as well, but let's not fix something that's not broken. And down here we can remove this section. We can copy it from above, so yeah, we can remove that. And we need a buffered image array. We can call them R equals new buffered image. And the size will be images.length. And we also need to change the return type, which will be an array and not a image itself. And then we copy array and return the array. And I think we need to place all of this in the same loop. So we're making a simple for loop. Int I equals 0. I is less than images.length I plus plus. And in here we take all of that. So we create a new graphic for every new image we have. And we have now the graphics. We need to draw the first image. We're going to copy from up here. We're drawing the first water image. Yeah, that looks all right. Then we do a rotation for it, because we know we're going to need to rotate. And then we also draw the second image. The actual image that needs to be rotated, but it won't be image like that, it will be the second image. Then we dispose of the graphics and put RI equals new image. So instead of returning the image, we place it in an array, and when we've done all of the images, we return the array. First, we draw the water tile. Then we apply rotation to graphics, then we draw the second image, dispose of the graphics, and put the new image in the array. Yeah, I think that's gonna work. We're gonna see if it works. And with this, now we need to call this from our tile manager. And we're actually going to copy this and comment that out, just to be sure we don't screw anything up and we have a reference to how it usually looks. You don't have to do this, but since I'm doing it here, it's good to have some feedback or some reference how it used to look. And the first one here will need no rotation, but we're still gonna call the same method. And the first we need to get all the water tiles. Do we have anything we can use here? I think we can use this one actually, because we need a coordinate, and then we get all four of them. Yeah, so this one will work. We can use the same one actually. So any sprites, but we're gonna say 0, 0, and then do like so. So now we have the first argument. Now we need a second image, which is the corner. We can get that by using this get sprite. So we say something like get sprite, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna be 5, 0, and then we put in a rotation. So if we format that, and I think this looks good, put in the water tiles from that one, looks correct. Then the second argument is get sprite 5, 0. Yeah, that looks right too. And then we put in the rotation for this method. But it's the first one, so there will be 0, because there will be no rotation to the first tile. I think that looks good. We could try it and see if the game starts and runs with this. It does. So it should be bottom left corners. One of the corners should actually rotate. And if you look here, they do. So we're on the right track. All we have to do now is to do the same for all the other tiles. So I'm going to do this for all the other sprites as well, but I'm also going to speed it up so you guys don't have to watch a lot of repetitive coding over and over and over. But when you do this yourselves, make sure that the coordinates are correct for water. And for the second image, you copy the coordinates, 5, 0 here in this case, for the second image, and also make sure you place the correct rotation required. The first image will always be 0, so for beaches, the beaches top water, 0 rotation, and for islands, top island, or top left island, 0 rotation. But otherwise, it's going to be the exact same for all of them. So let's go. And while I'm speeding through this, don't forget to hit the like button if you like this content. And also, there is many more episodes to come, so don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of them. Cheers, guys. And I'm back, so everything looks alright. All we will do now is to check if the game runs. And everything should animate, there should be no problem, so let's try it out. Everything seems to rotate. The normal one, all the corners, all the islands. Yeah, I'd say everything works. We can try and just place one of each. Yeah, they work. Great. Now we have animation in the game. Perfect, that's just what we want. And of course, if we want to change the speed for the animation, we can do that. And I'm going to show you how. We simply go back to our editing class, and then we adjust this number. The higher the number, the slower the animation. So here is a perfect place to use our debug. So I'm going to place this in the other screen, but I can start here actually. And if we change it to something very quick, let's say 5, save it. Now the animation is going very fast. But we play something very slow, like 50, save it, and then we check. And with 50 as speed, it's slightly faster than twice a second. But you can set this value yourself. All we have to do is animation speed. And then we create a variable up here, private int animation speed equals, let's go with 25. And save it. But we created a new variable, so we have to restart it because the debug won't allow us to create new variables. Then edit. Yeah, I think this looks alright for now. That's a minor detail you can work on out yourself, how fast or how slow you want it to animate. And I don't see any reason why I should push this episode any longer. We got the animation going, all the code is working, so I'm gonna leave it here. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, don't forget, hit that like button, and there will be more episodes, so don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well. I hope you guys have a great day, and thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next episode as well. Cheers!